Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We have a very, very important show today. I want you to, before we get started, before we start doing anything, I want to ask you so kindly to please go ahead and share the program. Please go ahead and share the program. That is the way that we ensure that other people get a chance to see it. So if you're on Facebook, please share it. If you're on YouTube, please share it, because that is the way we do it. That is the way we actually ensure that we get that throughput that we need. So please, folks, if you are listening to my voice right now, please be sure to share it. We trust that we've been having internet problems, with everybody working at home right now. Things are pretty tight. What I understand, even though the people won't tell you, is that all the nodes are generally saturated. All the nodes are saturated, and as the nodes become saturated, you know what happens? We start to lose throughput, all that good stuff. So before we get started, please, folks, please go ahead and share. Do remember as well that you can reach us on YouTube. You can just go to youtube.com/Egberto Willies, youtube.com/Egberto Willies if you want to watch the program live on YouTube. And of course, you can see it on Periscope, as well as Twitch and a couple others. I can't remember which other ones do it live for you. But again, we are all over the place, my brothers and my sisters. Anyway, earlier on, just as soon as I came on, I saw a call came in from 714 that I didn't get immediately. 714, if you want to call back and get in before I actually start the show in full, just give us a call at, what's that number again? 646-716-5812. Rose Williams, welcome aboard. Lee Grant, welcome aboard. Bruce Pollard, welcome aboard. We are going to have a great show. Hey, let me tell you guys something. I am moving away from, our call-in usually uses a product called Blog Talk Radio in order to economize the process and also bring a bit more coverage. I am moving that to Zoom. So going forward, we will have Zoom going through we'll use Zoom to come in, which means I'll have a new telephone number for you to call in. I'll probably try to get another number to mask it on top of the current Zoom number and then use that as the call in. Of course, you're going to have to give it a code. But what it means also is that you don't only have to use the telephone number, but you can also call in directly from your computer. Anyway, Lee Grant has something to say already. He says, "Gee, Egberto, life sounds like it's very bad for you having suffer constitutional flaws, ideology-driven reasoning flaws, a spew of presidential sycophants and Trump cultists. I can see why you're frozen in some sort of an illogical stupor. Cheer up, things will get..." I just love what you just said there, my friend. Listen. It is interesting. It is very, very interesting that you'd say that, especially after the show that we are going to have today. Because what I have to show today is not that cheery thing that you have to say, Lee Grant. The one problem I have to say is it's a shame that when I say things like the depression will not be televised, it is so sad, but it's true. A lot of people are going to be maintaining in their bubbles because of the media that they choose to take. Now, Lee, the good thing about you is even though I know you're a Fox News viewer, and you probably listen to a whole lot of what they have to say. At least you give me a tiny bit of your ear. And if you give me a tiny bit of your ear, it means that I get a chance to plant seeds. So, Lee Granton, as much as you may not think it, I know I am planting planting seeds. But anyway, let's go ahead and go with the first thing. The first thing I want to show is what's occurring in Georgia, right? And I want you to see when you have government that gives a rat's you know what about the people. Check this out.
Even the president criticized how the governor was going about so-called reopening. So tell us how you're doing thus far.
Well, we are continuing to sound the alarm, and there is a story that was just released that the governor is relieving even more restrictions in the state. He's expected to lift the stay-at-home order that we have in effect in the state, and it's very disappointing. When you look at our numbers statewide, you look at the way we rank higher in obesity rates and diabetes rates, high blood pressure rates, and then you layer on top of that the African American community in this state, this could be catastrophic.
Mayor, the hospitalization rates are even more alarming. I want to read you something from the Washington Post. It says, surveying 8 Georgia hospitals, researchers found that in a sample of 305 COVID-19 patients, 247 were Black, more than 80%, and more than they expected. A quarter of the patients included in the study had no pre-existing conditions, and 5% of those patients died. A reminder, the virus can cause significant illness and death for previously healthy patients. So
I can tell you anecdotally that supports all that I've known for quite some time, that we are being disproportionately impacted. And I personally know people who've had no underlying health conditions who have been knocked to their feet with COVID-19. We have bed space. We do have capacity in our city. But the reason being is because we took very drastic early measures to shut down our city. But that shouldn't be the goal. It should not be the goal to fill up the beds. It should not be the goal to have enough ventilators for the numerous amount of people who may end up in the hospital. The goal should be not to have people get sick. Now, as it relates to our small businesses, that's a very different discussion, because many of these people are making this decision based purely on economics and the ability to put food on their tables. So we've gotten support from Goldman Sachs, for example, who's just given $10 million to our small business loan fund. We're setting aside money in our city budget for that. We're offering rent relief to people who have vouchers through our housing authority. So we are doing what we can on a very granular level to address these concerns, but it's very difficult when we are just one city in a very, very large state.
Very, very true. Very, very, very true. So, I mean, the reason I brought that thing in, right, is a lot of people says, oh, let's let the economy run. And Georgia was the first one that just went ahead and opened up. And you can see already the consequences, even before it opened up, who is getting attacked by this virus, who, because of a lot of history, is being hurt most by this virus, etc., etc., etc. But there's something that the mayor said at the end that concerned me. The mayor at the end said, we shouldn't be concerned about filling, even though they have bed capacity in the Atlanta metropolitan area, not in the rural areas and these other places, they don't. The thing about in those rural areas and other places, the people are, nobody reports about what they are going through a whole lot, even though they're going through a lot. If you saw what Rachel Maddow did, it was really, really bad in the rural areas in this country, but very few people talk about it. She has been handling it. But she said, we shouldn't be filling up bed space. It is almost as if they want to do exactly that. Fill up those beds to populate those hospitals that may be somewhat underutilized. But the other thing that she said at the end of that thing that was concerning is that who is helping out the small businesses? Who's helping out the people who need their rents while the thing is shut down? Goldman Sachs, that big stockbroker that has already taking a lot of the monies out of Atlanta, taking a lot of monies out of these big cities. So we give you a little penance to get a good name, to look like our type of companies are doing just fine, right? So we go ahead and we let them, go ahead and give a few dollars to these poor people. We go ahead and give these a little support, and somehow now they're benevolent. That is something that government should be doing, not some private company. That is something for government to do. So when I saw that, one of the reasons I wanted to bring that to you is like, my God, that is government's job, not private sector. And the only reason this private sector is doing it is that it had already bought government, and now it's putting it out. But here's the thing. We shouldn't the oil in the title of the show has to do with the depression, and I'm going to bring that up in a second. I'm going to tie it all in with these 3 videos that I'm doing when I get to the meat of the program. But here's the thing. As it turns out right now, the oil industry is doing real bad. There's a flood of oil. It started before COVID-19. There was a war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, flooding the market. And the rumor is that what they really wanted to do is to kill out the frackers here in the United States, because you can't frack at, I don't remember what the price is, $30 or something like that, a barrel of oil. And by the way, that just shows you how much Americans get ripped off in oil, right? Because in Saudi Arabia, it probably costs $2-3 to pull it out of the ground. Fracking, probably $30 a gallon. But in general wells, not much to take it out of the ground, right? So we've always gotten gypped when it comes to oil. But that's it. So we shouldn't rejoice of what's happening to the people in the oil industry. I don't. I have multiple friends who are in the oil business, multiple good friends who are deep involved. But there's a certain amount of poetic justice when you see a flood of oil because of actions by people, right? People stop driving because they have to stay home. They're not flying. They're not doing all these other issues. So what we were able to see is that we can have a material effect on the corporations by not using their product. A lot of people say, "Oh, not possible, not possible." Turn out we aren't using their product as much, right? And the price craters. Not only that, the air gets better. So I think what COVID-19 can teach us all is that we can actually show our power. It's not the other way around. This supply and demand stuff, yeah, to some extent it is true, right? But we can reduce the demand to force that price to come down and to force better air quality, etc., etc. What it does mean is a paradigm shift. But I want you to see this piece that was done. MSNBC has been doing some good insight pieces, and what I do is I cut the relevant portions out of them to tell the story, right? And the story that I want to tell with the oil industry, let's watch it first about the glut, and then we'll move on from there.
Coronavirus has created an unprecedented collapse in oil demand. For the first time in 50 years, the price of oil went negative, forcing companies to either pay someone to take it or find it to store it themselves. There's been these photos, if you've seen, of tankers floating offshore, holding oil.
But just down the road from where we are here in Drumright, Oklahoma, we have the town of Cushing. And that is where one of the nation's largest oil storage facilities are. It can house upward of 90 million barrels of oil when full. And the big concern right now, Chuck, is that with supply up and no demand, those reserves could well be filling up, leaving a lot of producers with no place left to take their oil. And this all started pre-pandemic. There was already a global trade war going on with Russia and Saudi Arabia really flooding the market with oil to drive the price down, so that when you did have the pandemic set in and demand plummeted as planes stopped, no one's driving anymore, factories shuttered, it left this industry in an unprecedented place. And that's what resulted in that negative price going down $37 below zero, leaving everyone here who has been in this industry their entire life flabbergasted and stunned, and really left with no idea as to what was to come next. Because as you can see behind me, this isn't just an industry here, it is the industry here. Towns have grown up around the wells, and we're already seeing layoffs, not just here in Oklahoma, but across those oil-producing regions, Texas, the Dakotas. One industry report says that 1 million workers could be losing their jobs in the oil field by the end of this year. As a result, a lot of these wells are shuttering down, but the concern, Chuck, is that in doing so, you can do environmental damage, and it can be even more difficult to bring that oil back up out of the ground. So everyone watching and waiting, that oil price about $10 to $20 right now, they're not going to be profitable, Chuck, until it gets closer to at least 30.
It's also a reminder, this red state, blue state politics business of going after each other's economy or your blue state, this or that. This is a reminder every state is going to have a different reason why they're going to need some money. They're going to need some bailouts from the federal government because their tax revenue is down, because every state collects their tax revenue differently. In this case, Oklahoma with oil.
This is what makes what Mitch McConnell had to say about letting these other states go bankrupt because of their high taxes. What they forget, all these states that are dependent on oil revenue with oil cratering, I wonder what McConnell is going to say when Oklahoma comes looking, when Texas comes looking, when all these companies where we have all this cratering and the oil prices come, what are they going to say now? What McConnell did, I hope Democrats make sure and come back and allow it to haunt him. I want you to hold tight on that particular oil story because I'm going to tie it in a minute, but I want to take a phone call from 409. 409, come on in, and then I'll continue with the other piece. Go ahead, 409.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, Egberto, it's Anand.
Anand, I can barely hear you. Kind of speak up for me, please, my brother.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think this plan to bankrupt states is going to be really bad, and already people in New Jersey and New York are going to be talking about how they bail out Kentucky every year because Kentucky and Mitch McConnell, their state gets a lot of federal money more than they pay. And they're not going to get their money back, and it's going to lead to some nasty regional politics. Also, at the congressional level, the 10 richest congressional districts in America right now are all Democratic. So you can't say that blue states are all blue districts are all welfare districts. No, they're actually the richest districts in the country right now. So if they're going to be stymied by lower income states and districts which are not chosen, because of the Senate, they're not chosen based on population, we're going to have a real big disaster on our hands.
Absolutely, absolutely so. And, we're going to talk about some of that as I get into the capitalism portion of the show. Anand, anything else you want to ask? Are you back in Texas or are you still in Ohio?
No, I'm still in Ohio. I'm just following the news from here.
All right, great. Well, anything else you want to add, my brother?
No, that's it.
All right, man. Keep up your good work, okay?
One more thing is that the oil patch, Southeast Texas, West Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, they better start looking at West Virginia, because if oil becomes like coal, Texas is going to start looking like West Virginia.
Well, I'm glad that you said that.
Realize.
I am so glad that you said that because we got to talk about that. But thank you very much, my brother. Have a good one, okay?
Okay, come on.
Take care. All right, folks. So the idea behind the oil glut is it shows the power that we, the people, really have. And it shows the power that we have. Now that we've seen the oil glut, we've seen what it has done to the environment in Germany, in Paris, in Mexico City, in Atlanta, in Los Angeles, here in Houston. Beautiful skies, people can breathe, asthma rates down, people are living better in these 2 months because of what they see. It gives some impetus to the Green New Deal and many other things that we really want to accomplish. And it also shows that we have the power to control the oil industry as opposed to the other way around. What we can't do is go ahead and cede it back to them. Now, a lot of people like to talk about, well, the economy, so the New York economy, to hell with New York, because what New York is going to do doesn't really affect me. And a lot of people in the Midwest, they think, oh, those New Yorkers or whatever. What they fail to realize, and I'm talking about not the real productive people in those states, but a lot of the people who are following, let's say, the Trump sycophants, if you will. What they don't realize is something that's shown in this report done by Katie Tur, which is well done. In reality, the entire economy is connected. Very few people understand how deeply connected the economy is and why we should always remember we are our brother's keeper. Take a look at this.
Some governors that are starting to reopen, they're hoping to get people back to work, but their power is limited by a blunt fact of economics. While America may be 50 separate states, it soars or sinks as one economy. There are tens of thousands of coronavirus-shuttered restaurants in New York City. And this is one of them. The Smile is a popular downstairs cafe in Lower Manhattan. Matt Kliegman is co-owner.
The Sunday of the 8th, I think, we had probably the best Sunday we've ever had in the history of the restaurant. Monday, down 10 to 15%. Tuesday, down 10, 15%. Wednesday, 25%. At this point, we were like, something's happening. We closed Sunday night. So we went from maybe our best Sunday night we've ever had to, without question, the worst Sunday night we've ever had.
In 7 days.
Yeah.
When the Smile closed, it joined in a wave of local disasters that are also part of a cascading national crisis. Just as COVID-19 infections spread exponentially, so does COVID-induced economic pain, as we found out tracing the path of the Smile's losses back up through its supply chain. Normally, the cafe buys from about 24 vendors, including meat, fish, bread, and more, each with its own web of suppliers. We followed the Smile's produce line, 10 miles north to Hunts Point in the Bronx, home to Baldor Fine Foods and several other major produce distributors. When the Smile and the rest of New York's food scene shut down, business at Baldor was suddenly at risk of shutting down too.
So you lost 85% of your business?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
A lot, yeah. The information was coming in so fast and changing so rapidly, we almost didn't have time to think.
Baldor has recovered a lot of those losses with a pivot to home deliveries, but not enough to avoid cutbacks. And a shift in Baldor's business means a shift for its suppliers as well. Hundreds of local farms across the country, including Clover Farms in Pennsylvania, Little Bear Farms in Texas, ranches in California, and Rice Lake Farms in Grant, Michigan, where we found Rick Seibel. His 600-acre farm grows the onions, carrots, and beets typically destined for the thousands of other New York City restaurants.
Normally, like this time of year, I'm shipping 2 and 3 trucks midweek to New York, and now I'm only shipping 1 today.
Rick has reduced worker hours and has also postponed spending more than $250,000 on maintenance and equipment, money that is now not going back into the local or national economy.
I cut that piece that she did quite a bit. I was so impressed with what Katie Tur did on that piece and what Chuck with his correspondent did with the previous one on oil. And let me tell you what got me with that one. When I wrote my book, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, I gave that example as far as how it all permeates the economy, right? I gave the example of the baker, the guy who makes bread, and the bread had to come from flour and all that. And I gave that example, but a lot of people don't sit down and bake bread and that sort of stuff. So when I saw Katie's piece, I was like, that is better. Because people go to restaurants and they can feel the restaurants and they see the tomatoes on their plates and they see the onions in their gravy and they see all of that, and they are able to internalize and visually see that, wow, I am dependent on the Midwest. I am dependent on California. I'm dependent on Oregon, Washington. I am dependent on Florida, Texas. And it's all interconnected, right? So therefore, we are all one economy. And what has happened with COVID is COVID has proven a lot. Before I go into the blog of the week, which brings it all together. I want to tell all my good folks hello. Kathy C. Courtney, welcome aboard. Michael Rodnin, welcome aboard. Robin Sierra, welcome aboard, and thank you for the kudos. May Wood, welcome aboard, and thank you for those podcasts that you send me. I'm a little bit behind on them, but you send me some great podcasts, Maywood. Rose Williams, thank you again for all that you do. Your story keeps getting hits from that interview that you did, that we did on Medicare for All. That was a good piece done, my dear Rose Williams. Michael Rodnin, welcome aboard. And my buddy, Normal Reynolds. Normal Reynolds is responsible for the show today. Reynolds woke me to hell out of bed today and said, "Hey, did you see what the governor said?" And I'm like, which one? There are so many governors saying some crazy things these days. I said, "What you talking about?" He said, "Oh, about people having to go." I said, "Oh, you mean that governor that is forcing everybody back to work? That's what you're talking about." Yeah, I saw that. Tony Emery Hicks, welcome aboard. Norman, you're responsible for this show on not only this thing with the bankruptcy, not bankruptcy, but depression, but also for what else I'm going to cover, okay? You are responsible. Anyway, continuing. Let's see. Roberto Lewis, my brother, how are you doing, sir? Robert Lewis, how are you doing? Michael Rudnin, Lawrence Sims, Rose Williams. Who else is here? If I miss you, forgive me. Lee Grant, Bruce Pollard, how are you doing? Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Anyway, continuing. I want to read you now my. I want to read you now the what is it? What should I call this? The blog of the week. And you know how I do that. I do it this way. I go like this. It's time for the weekly blog post. Okay, the blog of the week is titled, "The Depression Will Not Be Televised as the Pain of Many Made Invisible." But, before I go to that blog of the week, I got a piece. And the piece that I got was concerning, right? It had to do with red state governors, and this one was initiated, like I said, by Norman Reynolds. And it goes like this. I titled it, "Red State Governors to Their Citizen, Starve to Death or Risk Death Working. Antiseptic Slavery." Norman, you're responsible for this piece. I got up in the morning and I read I went ahead and looked up the article that actually stated which governor it was that told their folks, "You better get back to work because I'm not giving you unemployment." And this is what I wrote for that. I said, "I told many on my media show Politics Done Right that capitalism is a form of antiseptic slavery. Many thought I was insensitive or making inflammatory statements. Here is a fact. When it is running in a steady state mode, rarely does one see the deficiencies. When there are disruptions, it heals itself by hurting humanity until it reaches equilibrium again. Only those who own most of the capital and those protecting the owners of said capital do well. Titans of capital, executives, and high-level managers. But capitalism is more efficient than slavery. You see, slaves had to be clothed, fed, and kept relatively healthy because they were someone's property. The workers under capitalism without real regulations are disposable. So if you work for a company, you're disposable. They just take you out and replace you with something else. In slavery, we can't just take you out and replace you with something else, because by taking you out, we're taking out our property, our money, our capital. So the slave is more valuable to the corporation than the worker, the employee today, because the corporation owns the slave in the olden days, but you're disposable. The worker, read antiseptic slave, does not have to be clothed, fed, or kept healthy. As such, no health insurance and many other social services a humane system should have. Some would say that the worker has choices. To some extent, that is true. But just like slave owners formed their own cabal, so do corporations. As long as corporations are more powerful than the person, the mom and pop business, they set values. They set values, the corporation that is. The red state governors made it clear whose interests they stand for. While they will not use a whip to force you back to work, in other words, they're not whipping you, get to work, get to work. They have no problem using a virtual whip, your starvation or inability to live without going back to work for the corporation. Read Slave Master. Who cares nothing about your health or well-being? That is so important for you to understand. Because people thought the only reason slavery was gotten rid of was because, Brother Lincoln, President Lincoln wanted to save the Union. That's what he said he wanted. I mean, first of all, he didn't really care too much about the humanity of the people. It was to save the Union. But the truth of the matter is, the Union dependent on slave labor too, right? They got their cotton from the South. They didn't say we can't buy cotton from the South because you have slaves. We'll go ahead and buy it from Brazil or something like that. They didn't say that. So everybody was complicit. There is this North-South fallacy that the South is so much more degenerate than the North. The North just have a different level or a more elitist degeneration. Okay? I love my Southerners. I love my Northerners. But let's get it right. Slavery was an institution. It was an economic institution. We dehumanized some so that we could continue this particular economy. That's all. Please don't ever forget it. And capitalism, the next instantiation above slavery, was a more antiseptic form of slavery. You wear a suit, but if you're a middle-level manager, you're just a different kind of slave. You work in the stores, you're just a different kind of slave. And when you find out what kind of slave you are, is when capitalism is under stress. When capitalism is under stress, that's when you find out if you're a free person or a slave. And when that governor said, no to your unemployment until you go back to work, and not only did she say that, but also your employer is now responsible for reporting you to them if you decide not to go to work. Let's remember these things. And by the way, for anybody who thinks these are lies or revisionist history, as I just saw in the blog, or rather in the frame, please look up what I've said. I've asked everybody who listens to Politics Done Right not to take anything I say at face value. Now, when you develop a certain level of trust, you can. But until you develop that level of trust, go ahead and I am willing for you to go ahead and research everything that I say on this show on your own. Please do. Because that is how we form. And if I've made a few mistakes here and there, and every time I've made one, I've come on air and corrected that. Okay, now, continuing. So let's understand that first about capitalism. Now I can go to the real blog of the week, title, The Depression Will Not Be Televised as the Pain of Many Made Invisible. And this I use a post that I made on my page as the catalyst for this. So here it goes. I made some changes to it, but I found it prescient for today. Does anyone sometimes feel that they are in a dream? I do. I thought George W. Bush was a terrible president, but I felt he was president even if placed into office by several constitutional flaws. Trump's ascendancy is, however, the perfect storm, a constitutional flaw compounded by ideology-driven reasoning flaws by otherwise good people. One asks, how can so many otherwise intelligent professionals serving the president become sycophants? It is the latter that scares them. In other words, they are fearful because there's a group of conservatives who are on their team, if you will, that are more that form their plurality in their group. In their group, that's the majority. They had two options. They could do what the good people do and just leave the party and say, I just can't tolerate that, I am leaving the party. Or they can stick with what what some people consider a culture, what some people think they just can't break the link. Best things to break the link, brothers. Break the link, break the link. Anyhow, so why do they become sycophants? Because they can't honestly leave. They feel like they've been naked without their body armor. The masses that makes the conservative and evangelical movement. Okay? So, those of their ideological ilk seem so unmoving to the reality that they are frozen in some sort of an illogical stupor. Unfortunately, we are not going to wake up out of this. A senator from a continually bailed out state unwilling to give back to the states that bailed his state out, a president and his sycophants giving life-threatening advice, an administration competing with states for life-saving medical supplies to cause high prices that profit their benefactors, effecting environmental destructive regulations while everyone is focused on COVID-19, and so much more are our realities. It's what's happening today. Red state governors, in hope of stalling the depression, are attempting to starve their citizens back to work. As the president and his cabal of governors attempt to coerce Americans to go back, they should heed the economic and health meltdown occurring in Guayaquil, Ecuador, where death COVID-19 infected bodies are left on the streets rotting. And if you think that can't happen in the United States, guess what they had rotten in New York yesterday? They found a truck, a U-Haul filled with rotten bodies. COVID bodies rotten in New York City, one of the most advanced cities in the world. So don't sit back down there and think it only happens to them down there. Those third worlders, those subhumans. It only happens to them. No. You see, one of the things COVID has a way of showing is humanity is humanity is humanity. We're all humans. Unlike what some say or some believe, we cannot bestow humanity on no one. We cannot bestow on someone what they already are or what he or she already is. Let's remember that. So, while forcing people back to work before the pandemic is under control may forestall the depression, it will make it worse. It will make it worse. And if you take a look at the doctor that I had on, no liberal, the doctor that I had on yesterday, he made it quite clear. Now, this will not pass. Again, we are headed to a depression. I fear that neither the media nor our politicians will properly inform the population of what is to come, not just nationally, but throughout the world. We are insulated from the massive suffering caused by this virus throughout the world. Then again, we have only been concerned about humanity in the West. Do you think I'm kidding? Think about this. Whenever we go to war, we lose a few people relative to the amount of people we kill. When the United States invaded Panama under the pretext to pick up Manuel Antonio Noriega for selling drugs to the United States, a product the United States love. A lot of people love the drugs that Manuel Noriega was getting to the United States through different methods. A lot of people love those drugs. Because Americans love the drugs, Manuel Antonio Noriega facilitated those drugs. But guess what? Bush didn't like it. Of course, the reality is that he was working for the CIA and he didn't do it. When they wanted him to invade a few other places, he said, hell no. And since he bucked the United States, they wanted to show you don't buck the United States, so we're going to take you out. In the process of taking Manuel Antonio Noriega out, about 20 Americans died. About 20 Americans died, or so, somewhere around there. You know, or between 20 and 100. I don't remember exactly, but it's in the double digits. The UN said 4,000 Panamanians died. I know it's 10,000 because I know where they bombed. They bombed David Chiriquí, Colón, and in Marañón, not Marañón, but Chorrillo. Okay? That's where they bombed. I know all those places. That's where I'm from. My dad, rest his soul, was running all through the house as the Cobra flew over his home, sending missiles into the tenements right next to the Cuartel Nacional. That's one of the armories in my town and the armories in the other towns. We don't have an army. We don't have a navy. We don't have an air force. They tested the stealth fighter in Panama, 1989. So let me tell you, when I say we don't value humanity but humanity in the West, those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. Anyhow, the conditions will be that many of us will be able to tread water for the duration. So as this depression comes down, a lot of us will be able to handle it. A lot of us, and we won't see it. In fact, prices are going to be so low for those of us who can make it, we're going to be happy. You're not going to be having inflation. You're not going to be having high prices for stuff. So those people who have a few bucks, they're going to be doing fine. But there is a large plurality of Americans that will suffer, unfortunately. It won't be televised by the mainstream media, by the corporate media, because just like they don't want to upset you with the possibility that is occurring internationally could occur, that the possibility that is occurring internationally could occur here, just like they isolate the despair in Appalachia and highlight the ghettos and the barrios to give the majority group a semblance that this won't happen to us. They just happen to them. They just happen to that underclass. They just happen to the others. But you are safe. What do you have to complain about? So the depression, all those people dying in Appalachia, you won't see too many of it on TV. All those people dying elsewhere, you won't see it too much, but you're going to see in the ghettos and the barrios, you're going to see all those people suffering and saying, I want. And the idea is going to be during this depression to make you believe that there's a group of people, more so than others, that are constant beggars, that constant want, so that there is no pity in your heart because it makes it seem like you're seeing things doing fine, you are working, you can buy bread, you can buy cheese, you can buy all these things at discounts. Why can't they? And they're going to continue to create that magical polarity. And so, I said, I may have made a mistake when I said the depression will not be televised. I should have said a different depression. Well, actually, it's true. A depression will not be televised because what you are going to see on TV won't be a real depression. So the depression will not be televised, but many of us will make sure that as many as we can see it and feel obliged to do what is necessary to fix it. A new economy for all. So folks, that's the reason why we always tell you, you got to support independent media. Because when the real depression starts, when all this stuff begins, rest assured, you're not going to see it. You won't see it on TV. You won't see it at all. Anyhow, I think that is the blog of the day. The depression is coming. Before I get into or answering the questions out there or talking to you guys on the thing, I want you to tell you something. This depression was coming anyhow. This was going to happen. The stock market high rise was a Trump. When Trump says, I created that high stock market, he's right. He gave the $1.5 trillion to that class that owns those stocks to buy them back, which caused them to rise. You put less stocks on the market, the price of the stock rise. That's true. You create a false economy where everything goes up to the top, and this is proven, right? You know what I mean? The mere fact that we have near full employment and people still don't have pricing power for employment defies everything about supply and demand, assuming supply and demand is correct. Because if we are close to full employment, which is under 4% at that time, we should start to see wages go up, but they don't. Why? Because the theories were always wrong. We always had a master-slave relationship. Just an antiseptic form. Just an antiseptic form. After I posted this on the website, on the Coffee Party website, a person, there are a couple of people that left some interesting type messages. But a woman left this message that said, I certainly felt like that in my job during the economic crash, my boss treated us like dogs and literally told us in front of a dozen patients, she works at a hospital, in front of a dozen patients that they get resumes every day and we could easily be replaced, knowing full well we were trapped there because there were no other jobs open to go to. That's what their boss at a hospital, talking about compassion, told them. Get rid of you. And if you doubt that's happening, hospitals are laying off. Why? They need elective surgeries. Without elective surgeries, they don't make any money. You see, when you have healthcare as a profit-based entity, it is so immoral. And that these people that claim to be moral cannot see that a for-profit healthcare system is evil, it blows my mind. I answered her. I said, I am so sorry to hear that. Don't despair. Ultimately, just like we have shown the oil companies who is boss, for now we need to make it the norm. Those of us producing the goods, services, and intellect are collectively the economy, not the plutocrats. But we first have to work together, acknowledging our worth and stop ceding it to the undeserving. Let's remember that. We don't have much time before the plutocracy and all these folks get into the ears of the politicians. We have to get into the ear of the politicians. And that's why I ask you guys so often to share these shows. I want folks to listen, and I want folks that as they listen, they feel empowered to go out there and say, no, we won't going to take it. We are going to make a change. We are going to make a change. Anyhow, let's go ahead and start with the question. Lee Grant, I think I answered that one already, Lee. Gee, Egberto, life sounds like it's very bad for you, having to suffer constitutional flaws, ideology-driven reasoning flaws, etc., etc., etc. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Lawrence Sims, Egberto Willis, do you still make apps or know someone who does? I don't make apps anymore. Most of the people making apps right now, believe it or not, are in India. You know, they have very good engineers as well. Would that be outsourcing? Yeah, but that's a good outsource. Okay, let's see. For most locales in the U.S., the death rates are going up. You're absolutely right, Michael Rudnin, and that's why it is so terrible. Michael Rudnin, New York Times, the new data is partial and most likely undercounts the recent death toll significantly, but it still illustrates how the coronavirus is causing a surge in deaths. You know what else? I'm not going to read the whole thing, Michael. You know what else I want folks to understand? That the corona deaths is not just about corona deaths, right? Because what happens is this. It leaves people impaired. It leaves people with strokes. It messes with their blood chemistry. It causes clots. There are a whole lot of things that they're finding out later on that will leave people with pre-existing conditions. And you know how our private healthcare system deals with pre-existing conditions. With Trump at the helm, they want like hell to get rid of it. Okay, continuing. Dangerous, dangerous, deadly, delusional, dirty Donald playing both sides by advancing for people to rebel against the shutdown and then take credit for the negative outcomes. Yep. You know what's interesting too? I've been talking about Trump going to the left of Biden for healthcare. Watch him do that. But then, of course, he's not going to come through. Rose Williams, with so much propaganda for years about government, I doubt that many understand what the purpose of government should be. What government can do better than private industry? You're so you're so perfectly right, Mademoiselle Rose Williams. How long has the industry been subsidized? Forever. That's how long, forever, in many different ways. Don't only look at the depletion allowance, but there are a lot of other ways oil companies are subsidized. Roberto Luis, mi panameño favorito. Egberto, if Zach could give 10 million, trust me, that did not give a dent to their business account. Thank you, Roberto. You get it. 10 million, Dick. That is like saying I'm buying people at a discount. They got more than that from the tax break. Roberto Luis, you hit it on the money. Norman Reynolds, mi hermano from Jamaica. Interesting conversation to be had related to the revelation of capitalism and libertarianism related to the current COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. Perfecto, hermano. Michael Rodney Egberto is probably going to replay the Cuomo video. Blue states contribute more to federal. No, I took it out of the feed. It's on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Egberto Willies. You can find that one with Cuomo there. Although, Rodney, didn't you think that was sort of wordy, that he was kind of wordy? You know you like things to come like that, brother Rodney. Just playing with you, man. Rose, replying to Rodney, no doubt that at least one of these events will occur within the next 3 months. Maywood, hello from Long Beach. Hello, my dear friend. And Robin Sierra, I'm happy that you found Politics Done Right. Please keep sharing it. Please let other people know about it. That is how we get the message out. So I do appreciate you being here, Robin Sierra. Okay, Michael Rodney, restaurants have either shut down or gone to delivery service. True. In Texas, however, they're opening. Tony Emery Hicks. Eres de Kansas City. She's from Kansas City. Welcome aboard, Kansas City. Kathy Courtney, my good friend here in Houston, Texas. May Wood, my podcast enforcer. Daniel Ledo, my conservative, quote-unquote friend. He doesn't like to consider me a friend. I still love him as a friend. Michael Rudnin says, let's see. What force comes from people running out of money for food? Yeah, you're right about that, Rudnin. Lee Grant, seems to me that our current issues around coronavirus are complex and can't be reduced to a simplistic people versus money binary. I beg to differ. It is always people versus money, Lee. It is always. If it weren't people versus money, as soon as a pandemic occurs, we would never think about how much something is going to cost. We would just go ahead and do it, and then worry about making the books add up later on. In other words, if we need masks, we go ahead and we get masks. We don't worry about pricing. If we get ventilators, we don't worry about what it costs. And also, if it wasn't money versus every ventilator company that had a spare ventilator, capitalist company, every private company, if it wasn't about money, they have ventilators in storage. They would go ahead and throw the ventilators out the door, send the ventilators where they need, have it tagged, and later on they will settle accounts. If humanity came first, that is what would happen. But you see, before those ventilators could leave that building, they had to think about shareholder value. They had to think about bonuses. They had to think about all these issues first and how it's going to affect their bottom line before they go out. Read the story that I copied over from Fair on Egberto Willies that talked about the ventilators only costing about $3,000 and New York having to buy them at between $25,000 and $50,000. Yes, it's always a money versus people. It is always. Don't you ever forget that, my brother Grant. It is always money versus people. We try to coax it in some other language so that we seem like we are still moral, but there's nothing moral about our economic system. And I don't have a problem with that economic system having no morality. That's not the problem. But the sections of our economic system that deals with the well-being of humanity, the well-being of humans, should be out of the domain of an immoral economic system and in the domain of we the people, government. Rose Williams, Jesus Edgar Medina. There is a net of misinformation to many people with specific profiles that are controlled by the media. Perfecto, hermano. You got that right. Rose replying to Rudnin. After 9/11, there was a woman interviewed from Arkansas, I believe, who went on and about the 9/11 happened because New York City was so full of sin. I remember that, Rose. I'm not going to read it because I'm running out of time, the rest of it. Let's see what else. Your blog just now, brilliant observations. Thank you, Robin Sierra. Daniel Ledo says the lies and revisionist history is strong with this one. I would like you to itemize the revisionist history that you think I've spoken about. Actually, Daniel, there are a few states that are, if you fear catching the disease or fear that the conditions are unsafe and your employer, it is not enough protections. You're right, as usual, Maywood. Lee Grant, Lincoln thought that blacks and whites would have trouble living together. Well, yeah, he did. The funny thing about it is blacks and whites have been living together for a very darn long time. And the truth of the matter, they live well outside of the structures that kept them apart. And that is what's quite so interesting, right? A lot of time, that's a different show. Okay, Rose William Bush was a nightmare, but this is surrealistic. You're right. I feel like the Twilight Zone, yes. Okay, Tony Emery Hicks. Pretend it's over is now the federal government's official pandemic response. It's not. I like that. Pretend that it's over. That's the response. Pretend that it's over. It's not going to change until we get rid of the lesser. Yes, you're right. I won't say the word. This is all we're going to get out of this administration, and it might be all we get out of 2021. Really, this is it. He's tired of the pandemic, so it's over. Kushner declared the victory. Yes. All right, let me see. Bear with me, guys. I have to scroll down quick because I got to get out of here. Anyone who thinks support democracy around the world is crazy? Yes. Truman said, all right, I got to scroll down. Wow, you guys had a lot. Rose, I think people need to think carefully before things get worse. Yes. I want folks to go ahead and read what we have there, but I have to go ahead and do my little quick pitch right here. Folks, you guys know this is a show that needs your support. This is please visit store.politicsdoneright.com, store.politicsdoneright.com. You can get there by going to store.politicsdoneright and get my book. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. You learn a lot about the economy from that book. You can either get it at store.politicsdoneright.com or you can go to Amazon and get the book as well. Of course, I prefer if you go to store because at that point, we don't have a middleman. You can get my T-shirts. You can get the things like, hey, we have these little stickers. We have my book talking about how I kind of kept my weight down and try to keep myself healthy. So check that out as well. But more importantly than anything else, what we need, friends, good friends, are subscribers. So I want to ask you, if you have the wherewithal to do so, please go ahead and subscribe to our show. First of all, let me give you the store link. This is the store link, folks. If you want to get something at our store, that's the store link. Now, to become subscribers, our subscription rates are very, very low because we want hundreds, we want thousands at very low rates because, hey, the guy out here, I need support. 16 hours a day is killing me and I'm not getting any younger, but I got to do it because this is what it's going to take to change. This is what it's going to take to change. Anyway, go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Again, that is patreon.com/politicsdoneright to subscribe to the program. You can subscribe to our program. If you also want, you can give a contribution via PayPal. And how do you get there? PayPal.me/politicsdoneright. Again, that is PayPal.me/politicsdoneright. As usual, folks, I know you can go listen to anything. You can go anywhere. There's so much here that you can go see. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for for spending this time. I want to thank you for sharing because we need you to share. Without you, we cannot be the movement. Without you, we cannot get the message out. We just could not do it without you. This is your show, and ask anyone who are contributors to this show, who are subscribers to this show. It is your show. You call me, you talk to me, you email me. Half the times, the things that you tell me make it into what the show is going to be about because we need your knowledge, what I call the community knowledge. That is what it's all about. The community knowledge, the collective knowledge. That is how we move. My name is Egberto